Now, let's turn to football. We'll hear from Nathan in a couple of minutes. Owen, what's your general takeaway from the week of chaos that we've had?
I think my general takeaway is that we're in a constant loop of misery where Robbie Keane will always be trending on Twitter immediately after an Ireland match, where Mick McCarthy will always be commentating on an Ireland match, just lurking over your shoulder when you're trying to watch some football. The memories of the past are just constantly popping up and reminding you of why the ball needs to be crossed at all times. I think Jack Byrne will always be trending on Twitter after Ireland games these days. And on we go. I think that is the misery loop. Robbie Keane, Jack Byrne, Mick McCarthy. That's your starter pack for being an Ireland fan in the year 2020. You can also throw in a bit of skullduggery. Like I fully believe that, or I want to believe that it was like a Slovakian ultra who was behind the positive test, the false positive the other day. So that's kind of like been my cliff notes from the last couple of days.
There's an assumption out there that we would have won that game if we'd had Connolly and Ida, in much the same way that, you know, we might have won the World Cup in 2002 if we hadn't ever stopped off in Saipan on the way out.
Correct assumption, of course. Who could possibly disprove that? I think that when somebody is missing, that missing ingredient always looks like it would have been automatically solved by the player who's missing. And last Thursday was no different when you thought to yourself, little bit of pace in behind the line here, as David McGoldrick is dropping deep, could really do with a bit of Aaron Connolly in that sort of setup. So that was definitely hammered home by the fact that he just wasn't playing. But I'm not sure would it have changed much. I mean, Aaron Connolly has been criticised under Stephen Kenny so far for not actually being clinical enough himself. So would he have suddenly got hot in front of goal? Like Ireland are like a golfer who have gone cold with their putter right now. That's the situation that they're in. Every other part of their game looks pretty good. And I thought at times yesterday they looked excellent. And I don't know. I'd actually always be worried if I was a Welsh football fan because they looked so poor yesterday for large swathes of it. And Ireland down to a shoestring team thought they performed admirably. I think the big overreaction right now, if you want to make an overreaction, is not that Stephen Kenny is under pressure. It's that Stephen Kenny should have got the job 12 months earlier and that we would have actually faced into, say, a playoff. If that is what happened, it would have been a much better oiled machine by this point in the path.
All right. We've got David Meyler with us this morning. David, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, guys.
What's your takeaway from the Wales game in particular?
We just need to find a way to put the ball in the back of the net, I think, is the story really from the last two games. I think the performances have both been, much better and a significant improvement on, say, the Bulgarian-Finland games. Like yesterday, I think, we control the ball a lot better. We moved around well. It's just when we're getting into the final third and we're getting chances, we've just got to start taking them. It's probably the one major downfall of this group is we just need to get goals. That's it. And the performance is good. They're knocking the ball around well. If you factor in everything that happened in the last few days with the, obviously playing 120 minutes, losing on penalties to Slovakia, obviously then the COVID hitting with the losing significant amount of players, that must have been, upset the preparation for Stephen. And then other lads stepping in to, play, doing well. And then it's just need those goals. That's it, really, I think.
Have you been in teams before where the team hasn't been scoring? And if you have, like, what gets the team out of that?
It's such a tough one because, look, that's why strikers are the highest paid players in the world. That's just it. It's just finding that player. That's why people laud Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, because they find ways to put the ball in the back of the net. I played in teams, where we've had, struggles. If you look at my first year in the championship at Hull back in 2012-13, that season, like our top scorer finished with 8 goals, and I think Troy Deeney at Watford had 20 plus or something like that. But we just found ways to win. Like we had different lads contributing with goals, where we were winning games 1-0 maybe, 2-0 or 2-1 or something. But we just found ways to get a goal or two. It's just so difficult. If you look at like someone like Shane Long's chance yesterday, you'd expect Shane to do that. I don't know, was it the fact that, Wayne Hennessy being 6'5", 6'6", comes flying out of him, jumps like a star, that he thinks I can just glance it past him. But like you'd put your house on Shane to score that because he's so good in the air. Like Darryl Horgan has another great chance where it falls. it's like the conviction. You just need someone to grab it by the scruff of the neck and kind of go, I'm going to be the one. In previous years, James McLean has probably been that player who scored very important goals. So I think that's just, all the signs are really good. I think we're playing lovely football. We are really trying to control games now, and we're not turning over possession. Yes, you can. I think for anyone who watched the game yesterday, it's quite interesting that there's a lot of people who are fully behind Stephen Kenny, and there's others who are a bit, have their reservations, and you can almost judge those people by their opinions that, it was an awful performance or it was a good performance. And I think I'm certainly in the camp that I want Ireland to do well and I want Stephen to do well, and the performances have been better. We've knocked the ball around. We are certainly controlling the game. If you look at Aaron Ramsey's interview after the game, he even compliments, he said it was a tough game because, Ireland have, tried to change their style. They're keeping hold of possession. They made it really difficult for us. He was almost taking a swing at us to say, like, in the past, we've been so negative, we sat deep. And then he said they've suddenly changed. So that shows that this group of players under this new manager are going in the right direction.
And when you think about the heart of the team being ripped out, particularly somebody like John Egan, who's kind of central to the leadership and the restart of play, it's like, okay, and all your pace as well. I can understand why the team looks a bit flat yesterday, and I can understand from an emotional perspective why the team feels a bit flat, having been knocked out of the Euros and so much riding on it. The game's hopefully going to be in Dublin if they ever happen, and you hate to make excuses and you hate to be. It's been a week of moral victories, but like, this is the fourth game into a new regime. There are definitely positive signs.
No, definitely. Like you said, John Egan would be a massive loss. If you look at, since Stephen's come in, he's picked the same back four, for 4 games. And then obviously to lose John, now Kevin Long came in, started comfortably well. It didn't look out of place. Obviously got him very unfortunate with the knock he picked up, like to have to go off. And then you look at, like, your right back has to slot in centre half. It's just kind of like those changes, because you'd imagine it would have been something that Wales might have spoken at half time, saying, can we get on to Doherty and test him at centre back? Now, I think Matt did really well there. He dealt with everything comfortably. I know in his post-match interview, he said that he probably was a bit sloppy at times, forcing the ball, but that needed to happen. But look, there would have been a lot of emotion, and plus the simple fact of, they go to Slovakia knowing they have to win, they lose. That would have been massive. And then to try and get yourself up. Of course, it's easy for people to say you're playing for your country. It's the greatest privilege and honour, which it is. But there still would have been a hangover from Thursday night's, loss, because you're striving to get to a major tournament. We haven't been blessed where every team that comes through in Ireland qualifies for every major tournament. So when that opportunity came Thursday night and then it's gone, it is hard to, get yourself up, because you're still thinking about your performance. What could I have done to, score a goal or create a chance or do something? So there are factors. But look, it was a positive performance. I think, we were better than Wales. Just need to find a way to get the ball into the back of the net.
David, how impressed were you with Jason Malumbi's performance yesterday?
Excellent. I'm really excited by him. Obviously, being a midfielder, I'm slightly biased towards midfield players. Look, I was on the phone to various different people yesterday. I texted him straight away going, I like the look of this fella. He's big, he's physical, he gets on the ball, and he drives forward with it. I think the big thing for him is, if you look at it, right, he's someone on his second international appearance, going and demanding the ball off the back 4 at times to try and start the attacks or start the play. Like, it's very easy for him to do that with the 21s when he played under Stephen, but then when you come into the senior team and you turn around on the occasion, yes, they say Shane Duffy is captain, to say, give me the ball. I know they would have trained together and played together at Brighton, but when you go into an international setup, it is different, and I was very encouraged by his performance. I think he's a really bright future. So it was really positive, and you can see why he got man of the match. He took the game by the scruff of the neck. It was almost, at times, you'd look at it saying, a lot of these young lads come in and the game can almost pass them by. He certainly wasn't, one of those that didn't want to wait for anything to happen. He was determined to go out and say, I'm going to, affect this game, and, I'm going to put in a performance that the manager's going to remember.
Is it a case that Stephen Kenny should perhaps just put the trust in Malumbi at this point, where he is one of the first names in the team sheet, and we know that there is going to be a decade of Malumbi in this team? Because it's a rare thing that we can talk about, a young midfielder who is already operating at quite a high level.
Yeah, no, that is true. But at the same time, you have to pay respect to the lads that are, tried and tested and who were in there. I think Conor Howard, Jeff Hendrick, and obviously James McCarthy haven't put a foot wrong in the games they played. Yes, you could, if you really want to break down their performances, you can easily analyse it and show a different part where their positioning could be better here. They could have done this, they could have done that. That's obvious. But at the same time, he's one, like Jason's one that is coming through and moving in the right direction, which is always a positive. It's whether or not Stephen feels comfortable enough to put him in there. Like, you looked at the Slovakia game, was obviously the biggest game of Stephen's 4 games so far, and he went with the tried and tested midfielders. I think Jason will get plenty of opportunities and plenty of game time. It's just he needs to keep moving in the right direction, and then at his own club, can he force himself into be playing first team football regularly to improve and get better and keep developing?
Or get a move to the championship where he'll actually be able to play a lot of games. What type of midfield constellation does having him in the team allow us to have? Because a lot of talk about McCarthy is that, and I think we might have talked about this last week, his best games for Palace have been with somebody beside him. If suddenly you have Malumbi beside McCarthy, does McCarthy become a better player? Does it change what you're able to do?
Well, I think that was the big thing. A lot of people were quick to highlight the fact going into the Slovakia game, Stephen obviously chose to play James alongside Conor Howard, kind of played the two sitting with the one in front, which was Jeff, rather than James sitting with the two in front of him. I think James and Conor complemented each other very well, because obviously, of course, Conor's left-footed, so he naturally tends to pull wide to receive the ball off centre halves, which inevitably leads into Stephen's push up the wing. It's whether or not Stephen wants to go with James and Jason, or will he continue to go with, Conor and James, or does he change it and go Conor and Jason? It's kind of like, at least he has options. There are, positive signs. A lot of it comes down to, obviously with James obviously picked up a knock, so it might be something he looks at to change. And it could be then something, if they were to get a result against Finland, is it something that we look at going forward? It's just, now that these games come, and like we said, there's been unfortunate things with COVID where players have had to drop out. It's just huge opportunities for anyone who does come in. You have to look at it both sides, that yes, certain lads will miss out who could have played. You look at, for example, Alan Brown, who comes on against Slovakia. He was impressive, got himself into the box numerous times, created some goal-scoring opportunities for himself. Can he score? Yes, of course. I know he'll be disappointed with them, but would he have played the other day where Jason mightn't have played? You never know. But then Jason steps in and puts in a very good performance. So there's all those little factors. But again, the game comes against Finland. They've got to be ready.
Josh Cullen came off the bench and made, I think it's his 3rd appearance, and that's his first proper competitive one. So that's him. He's obviously, and I don't think there's any doubt at all, this wasn't going to be another Declan Rice scenario. He's off in Anderlecht. He's playing at a high level there. He's 24 though, so he's not a kid either. What's his future in Ireland? Can he force his way into a first team? What type of player is he as well, for people who wouldn't have seen an awful lot of him?
Well, I've been very, very impressed with him in the sense that a lot of lads don't want to make that move abroad. Like, he's going to Anderlecht, which is going to be difficult. Do you know what I mean? He's going to be playing top level football. He's the type of midfielder, I think, that sits in front of the back four, is very comfortable and neat and in possession. I'd say the best way to describe him for people who've not seen a lot of him would be someone like a Jorginho, in the sense that he's neat and tidy, gets the ball and distributes it well. He's nothing flash, he's nothing over the top. He'll just look to keep, when he does play for Ireland, he'll look to keep Ireland ticking over in the sense of getting it, moving it from side to side, playing forward when he can. But he'll be that anchor man that won't light the world up. A lot of people would be quick to say, like, oh, can you do this? Can you play forward? But he'll be one that will just keep it ticking, he'll be the one breaking up the play, just knocking it around and keep Ireland on the ball.
Yeah. So again, I suppose that it's more options for them, and that's not a bad scenario for them to be in. Nathan's going to join us in just a moment. First though, what about the lack of goals in the Irish squad? Let's turn our attention to that. Here's Stewie Byrne and explaining why we all miss Robbie Keane.
You can see that we're still transitioning as a group. The issue of scoring goals is still a bit of a problem.
It's been a problem for years. So that's, in our last 3 years, 18 competitive games, and Ireland have scored 10 goals.
Yeah, we take Robbie Keane out of, you know, the equation, and scoring goals has been a problem for the last 15 years, you know. So unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. You can't get them kind of players anymore. They don't make them like that anymore. It's as simple as that. They're not coached like that anymore. So what we do need is we need a better understanding amongst the group that everybody is there to score goals. I think the way we play now will ultimately lead to that. I think the way we play now will create opportunities for all for a much wider range of players, rather than maybe a couple of centre forwards or whatever the case may be. There just needs to be a little bit more belief, I think, in the players that they can go get goals. And you look back at the chance that Hourahan had the other night, just lacked a little bit of belief, didn't he? Look at Long's header here today, a little bit of belief. That's all it is. That's the difference. It's regardless of, and it doesn't matter what level you're playing at, whether you're playing in the Phoenix Park like yourself, or you're playing at top level.
Never even got to that.
Never even got to that. Whether you're playing at the top level, you know,
like
belief is a huge thing, and it's fractions. You know, it's fractions.
Yeah, belief and fractions. This is OTB AM. It's Journo with you this morning all the way through until 10 o'clock. We're talking with David Meyler, and Nathan's just about to join us as well to parse through a week that's not quite over yet, Nathan. We're still awaiting some news to see exactly what the crack is with Aaron Connolly. There was the tweet that the FAI sent out last night calling up 5 players to the squad, including Adam Ida, and Connolly put his hand up on Twitter and then deleted the tweet a little bit after that. So I don't know if everybody saw that deleted tweet. So he clearly wants to come. There'd been apparently some talk last week about an injury in the build-up to that as well that we had been unaware of. So whether or not Brighton are going to allow Connolly to come is still TBC, and we're expecting some news on that in the coming days. I don't know, do we have... no, we don't have Nathan. No, Nathan dropped there, so... OK. Connolly would make a big difference to this team, and it would be great to see him play 90 minutes against Finland, Owen.
Without question, he's somebody who will represent that moment when Ireland will shift from a team that can't finish for their life into one that will end up scoring goals. He is our best chance of breaking that rut. Like, you put that point to David a moment ago, that how do you get out of a rut? The best way to get out of a rut is by having your best forwards in the pitch at all times, and Aaron Connolly has looked like one of the players who might create an opening in those first couple of games, in those first couple of Nations League games. So it's vital that he's back on the pitch sooner rather than later. I think there's still an opportunity here in this Nations League to do something, especially given how poor Wales looked at times yesterday. Like the Finland results previously was kind of put down to the fact that Ireland are a little bit rusty at the back. I think that theory has held up. I think the last couple of games have really allowed that theory to show that it was the truth, that those defenders just were not up to scratch at the start of the season. They just had a late finish to the previous season, weren't fully match sharp. And I think in the last couple of games, they've looked more impressive. They haven't looked perfect. There have been opportunities. Like, I mean, in Slovakia last Thursday night, there were some excellent opportunities given up against not the best team in the world. So there's still things to work on, but I just think the step forward has already been noticeable in the space of a month or so.
All right, we've got David Meyler and Nathan with us again. Nathan, we were just talking about the Connolly scenario there. When do we expect some news today, and whether or not Connolly's going to be allowed to come back?
Yeah, I think it'll be this morning, and it'll have to be this morning because they need to get the player in, they need to get him tested, and there's obviously any amount of protocols. He obviously wants to come back. It all depends on Brighton. In a typical scenario, it's an international window. They're competitive games. The club would have no choice. But obviously, I'm sure Brighton are a little bit bemused by everything that's happened over the last few days, and understandably may not want their player going again, particularly when they're looking at the Irish camp, and there has now since been a confirmed positive case within the Irish camp. But the player wants to come, so if he can put a bit of pressure on, you'd hope he'll be there.
Yeah, well, at least he hasn't been in close proximity to the players for a number of days now, so maybe he's okay. David, we didn't talk to you about the whole COVID situation, and you know, as a professional footballer, footballers talk. We heard that they were kind of wondering why they weren't on a bigger plane. What's your sense of how the players have taken what's happened over the last week?
Look, it's very difficult because I wasn't there, so I don't know the ins and outs of everything. I saw Matt Doherty say yesterday that they were meant to have a team meeting which got cancelled and were told to stay in their rooms. It's not great in the sense that, like, there's so many lads have to drop out, and then you have the fear. And I imagine for someone like myself, if I was in that situation, my wife would be wondering what's going on because, like you said, you're away in Ireland and then you've got to return back to England, and then have you been unfortunate enough to contract the virus that you can bring it back. I imagine clubs, club doctors, club physios are on the phones to players saying be careful because like you said, even with Aaron going back, if he's back at Brighton, then Brighton are going to be like, well, we're not sure. Do they want to release him? Of course, Nathan is saying the player can put pressure on, but then if it comes from the manager, like, well, we don't really want you to go in case of a thing. It's a very difficult situation. Like what I do admire is that at the same time, once there was a positive test, that you could see that the medical staff of Ireland are abiding by the rules and are being strict, rather than, I'd say, there probably been a case, I know this is a one-time thing, that we've never had something like this really before, that almost 15, 20 years ago, it would have probably got, rubbed under the carpet a bit, and those players would have probably played. Especially someone, if you look at Aaron Connolly, who would have, been one of the names on the team sheet come last Thursday, that in the past, he'd probably be, the information probably wouldn't have come out, and Aaron probably would have played just because it would have benefited the Irish team. So, look, it is a tough one, but at the same time, if those lads drop out and other lads get opportunities, you have to look at both sides of the coin. So other lads then come in, they put in good performances, they can, stay in the team.
The players aren't going to blame Kenny for what's happened, are they?
You can't. How can you? I know you spoke about a bigger plane or whatever, but you get on with it. Those things they're out of your control. You can't. Players shouldn't even have an opinion on that. They'll still look, when they went to Slovakia. They'll still fly privately. They have the best of everything. You have whatever is important and what's needed. I don't think you can blame Stephen. No. They're not there to be moaning about certain things like that. They're there to perform. Can I get myself in the best physical condition to perform, against, say, Slovakia, and then into, the Wales game, etc. Those small things are they're just unfortunate things that happen. Like, it started with a backroom, member of staff. This person doesn't want to have COVID or to be testing positive. It's not a case of, these things are just out of your control. You can only control what's going on with yourself and your training sessions and your preparation for the match. I think those outside factors can't get in, or shouldn't affect your preparation for the games.
Yeah. Nathan, what do you expect preparation to be like for this Finland game?
Well, obviously slightly changed, because the plan was that they would fly out today, and now they're not going to fly out until tomorrow because they need to get more players tested, and they're going to spend a little less time over there. So whether that has a huge impact, I'm not sure. It didn't feel as though the disarray of Saturday night and Sunday morning played a huge part in the performance yesterday. There was obviously a bit of fatigue, as you've touched on already, but it's become a bit of a sideshow, to put it mildly. In fact, it ended up overshadowing the game yesterday. And I think David's right, and you heard from Gary Owens earlier. There's an awful lot uncontrollable about what's going on at the moment. The one question is, could they have controlled that situation better? So we do know, red herring or not, that if the players had sat where they were meant to sit on the flight over, they would have been able to play in the game. Now, did anybody tell the players where they were meant to sit? And if they did, when they weren't sitting there, why did nobody tell them to go back? So there's an element of bad luck. There's clearly a huge element of bad luck, considering the backroom staff member tests positive, and it's a false positive. But if the players sit where they're meant to sit, they play in that game. Now, there's nothing to say that on the way back they wouldn't have been sitting beside the player that has since tested positive and ruled out of yesterday's game and Wednesday's game, and that is the element of misfortune. But it's a very complicated scenario, because we've heard the word bubble used a lot around elite sports teams and Premier League teams, and it's a little bit easier for them to create a bubble, whereas the Ireland team are coming in with 25 players, all coming from different clubs, 25 backroom staff, all coming from different backgrounds, from different parts of the country. Have they been in a position to isolate for 2 weeks to come into the bubble? No, they haven't. So while the bubble may work when you're all in it. It doesn't mean what's happened in the 5 days previous was going to work. So that's the issue that they're always going to face. And I do think that's where the big issue is going to come for international football. What's the reaction going to be like next weekend? How many players are going to miss Premier League matches because of this international window and because of COVID issues? And it just seems so complicated. And it seems a little bit crazy when you look at the ways of the world at the moment, even of somebody like Darragh O'Shea and Jason Knight, who are in Ireland for under-21 camps, fly to Italy. They're in Italy. They don't even know if the game can go ahead because Italy had gone to Iceland and they'd had issues with COVID. The game hasn't even played, and they're back again to Ireland now to link up with the senior squad, and then they're going to go straight to Finland and back to the UK after that to play with their clubs. So if you're West Brom looking at that, you're thinking, we really don't need this for one of our young players who's crucial for us in the Premier League. I think it's going to get very messy over the next month or so.
And whether or not those games all go ahead in November is still, I guess, a little bit up for grabs. Who do you want to see playing against Finland, and who are you likely to see playing against Finland? I mean, obviously, at this stage, you know, you could experiment, but actually, I'd say Stephen Kenny really wants a win, really wants some goals, and probably won't be making too many changes.
No, and he doesn't really have enough options, I guess, to make too many changes either. And they need a win in terms of the seedings for the World Cup draw. Ireland are right on the precipice of dropping from second down to third. So a win here would go a big way to keeping Ireland amongst those second seeds. I think Darragh O'Shea will probably come in and start straight away and make his debut at centre-back. Whether Kevin Long can recover or not in time, these players, some of them have played full, grueling game with all the emotional side of it over in Slovakia for 120 minutes and played 90 minutes yesterday. So they need a break. I expect Jason Malumbi will start once again. Enda Stevens, I thought, was excellent over the two games and has been one of the players who looks like a key part of the transformation under Stephen Kenny. The full-backs are doing the right thing all the time. Some of the other players who came in, Jason Knight may add a little bit of energy in there, and Seanie Maguire may get a start ahead of Shane Long. Obviously, a lot of the eyes in Ireland are going to be, does Jack Byrne finally get his game? He was the one outfield player who didn't get off the bench yesterday, and you'd have to imagine he'll get a few minutes. But options-wise, it's very difficult to predict a team because what are the players like after yesterday? Back, third game in 7 days. What are the players like who are arriving in late into the squad? I'd imagine we'll see 3-4 changes again, but unfortunately for some of those players, they're going to have to go and play that third game of the week.
Yeah, but David, physically, I guess footballers want to play football. Is 3 games in 7 days at the outer limit of what you're able to do? Or are you feeling, okay, I've come through those games, my body's actually responded relatively well. You know, this is what pre-season was about.
No, exactly. Look, everybody will be putting their hand up to play. Anyone who played the other day, I know, you know, Nathan's talking about lads will be tired, but at the same time, you know, international appearances and games don't come around so regularly that you can, you know, afford to miss games. Everybody will be putting their hand up. If you looked at Matt, you know, his interview after, he said, I won't use tiredness as an excuse. Like, they'll all be saying, I want to play. Like, I know Nathan touched on Kevin Long. I imagine he's back in, you know, the hotel room icing up to make sure that, you know, that black eye or that swollen eye is gone so that he can be fit and available. You know, obviously these young lads coming in now, a lot of them will be trying to impress the manager in the next 24 hours to try and get some, you know, game time. So I imagine, look, I think it'll be quite similar. The team, I can probably see Darragh O'Shea maybe, because he's played in the Premier League, as Nathan said, so he could come in depending on Kevin. I think the midfield will stay the same. I think James, obviously, is out, so they'll have to bring in a replacement. And of course, Adam White has been brought back in. Whether or not Aaron Connolly comes in, will probably go in. So yes, there probably will be 3 or 4 changes, but the remaining core will probably stay the exact same.
And if you're Kenny, like, I don't know how much the players ever think about the seeding for the World Cup draws, but that's hugely important from his perspective.
No, of course it is, but I don't think players, unless you're one of the older, experienced ones, probably fully look at it or understand it, in the sense that the younger lads are just fresh. They're kind of, especially, you know, the ones who are coming in, Darragh O'Shea, Jason Knight, Ronan Curtis, who's been, I know Ronan's been in before, but they'll probably just be thinking, I want to train well, train hard. Can I get myself on the pitch when the game comes around? They won't be looking at too much. They won't see the significant importance. Like, I look back at my time with Martin O'Neill, that we used to have meetings to break down the Nations League so that players could understand the importance of it. And it was only, look, to this day, I probably still don't understand it fully. I have a better idea of it.
Don't ask Nathan about it, though. Whatever you do not ask Nathan. We'll be here for an hour.
Yeah, well, even so, when I sat down to watch the Slovakia game the other day, obviously it's the Nations League, but it's for the Euros. And then my wife is asking me, and she said, well, who are they playing Wales in? I said, that's the Nations League, but it's like, well, you just played. And I said, look, I'm not sitting down trying to explain to you. But at the same time, these lads are coming in. They're only concerned on trying to get on the pitch and play. That's the most important thing. And look, whether you understand it or don't understand it, if they're getting results and winning games, that's only good. So that's got to be the aim. There's just been a lack of goals. If we can start scoring goals, then everything will change.
Speaking of scoring goals, why is Michael Obafemi not in the squad? Here's a tweet from Kieran Hartigan. Michael Obafemi, Will Smallbone not in the squad. Baffling to say the least. 2 players playing in the Premiership. Obafemi obviously not very happy being left out of the original squads when the squad was announced properly the first time around. It is a bit strange, given everything that's going on at the moment, that there's no conversation around him, David, unless he's injured, that we don't know
but
about.
He's with the 21s. And the 21s, presuming that game against Italy takes place, is a huge game. So I suspect Stephen Kenny looked at the attacking options he has, and he still has Shane Long, Shawnee Maguire, Adam Ida is now in with the squad as well. So did he need Michael Obafemi? Probably not, because he has 3 players there. He's only going to start one of them, and it's probably going to be Ida. So, would Michael Obafemi get game time, or is he better off actually having spent the last few days with the 21s, staying with them, leading the line for the 21s, and winning a game that could well get them to a European Championship final? So I think the players he's picked from the 21s, and Jason Knight and Darragh O'Shea, are positions of the field he feels he needs somebody to play in on Wednesday night. So Darragh O'Shea I would expect to start in all likelihood, and there's a very good chance Jason Knight will appear off the bench at some stage.
What about Smallbone?
I think a similar scenario, that he's probably looked at his squad and thought, do I need him right now for this game? So maybe it was Smallbone or Knight, and he decided to go with Knight. He obviously knows Knight a lot more from the underage setup than he does Smallbone, but I don't think there's some conspiracy theory here. By all accounts, Obafemi's gone in with the 21s and has had a smile on his face and has done the right thing.
All right, and David, your take on the Obafemi situation, given that we're short of goals and here's an effervescent striker who might be able to ping one in?
Look, the thing I would say is Stephen has come from the 21s into the first team. He's worked with Michael, so he knows what Michael is going to bring to the table. I wouldn't read too much into it. I think he's just made a decision that the strikers I'm using are ahead of Michael, and then I think the ball will fall back into Michael's court. And is he doing enough with Southampton? Is he playing regularly enough? And then when he's in with the 21s, what's he doing? Because obviously, look, Jim Crawford is there that he's very close with. He knows well. He'll have regular contact with Jim to kind of say, right, how's Michael doing? Is he going to benefit me if I call him up? Is he going to make an impact into the team? I think those will be conversations that are had, behind closed doors, and he'll have an understanding. And that probably at the moment, if you were to look at it, Michael's probably not doing enough to, warrant a place in, the first team setup.
Yeah. All right, lads, great. Thanks for being with us this morning. Great stuff. To David Meyler, my thanks, and to Nathan as well. And obviously more analysis coming your way across the day on OTB Sports and on the show this evening from 7 o'clock. Obviously, as we get news about whether or not Aaron Connolly has been officially allowed to rejoin, or is officially rejoining, or is not officially rejoining for whatever reason, he might not be officially rejoining, we will bring that to you as soon as we possibly can. It's 8:49 this morning. It is time for the papers.